Everyone knows Billy the Kid as the notorious outlaw, plastered on wanted posters and depicted as a cold-blooded killer. But what if the history books only told you half the story? What if the Wild West's most infamous figure also possessed a hidden, softer side, one marked by unexpected acts of compassion and surprising kindness? Prepare to see Billy the Kid in a light you never imagined. Forget everything you think you know about Billy the Kid. For decades, his legend had been cemented in violence and infamy. But beyond the gunfights and the breathless headlines, there existed a largely untold narrative of surprising empathy and genuine human connection. This story uncovered the astonishing acts of compassion that history conveniently left out, revealing a Billy the Kid far more complex than the myth. What if the bad guy was sometimes a hero? This was not the tale of a merciless killer. This was the story of a young man shaped by dust, silence, and hard choices. A man who, despite his outlaw status, showed acts of kindness when no one was watching. Only if you want it to be. The desert woke before the sun. Cold clung to the ground like a living thing, biting through leather boots and crawling up the legs. The wind whispered low between rocks and scrub, carrying the scent of dry earth and old smoke. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote cried, not hunger, not fear, but habit. Billy the Kid sat beside a small fire, his back against a weathered mesquite trunk. The flames cracked softly, warming his calloused hands wrapped around a dented tin cup of coffee. The brew smelled burnt and bitter, thick as tar, but it kept the cold from settling too deep into his bones. He wore a Stetson pulled low, a faded bandana at his neck, wool coat rough against his skin. His Colt .45 rested across his lap, heavy and familiar. Not comfort, responsibility. The firelight revealed a small sapling a few feet away, a young desert cottonwood struggling against the hard soil. Its leaves trembled even when the air stood still. Someone had cleared the rocks around it once, long ago. Billy watched it for a long moment. He watched the sapling for a long time, the way a man measures time not in hours, but in endurance. That tree had no right to be there. The soil was unforgiving, water scarce, the wind too constant for something so fragile. And yet it remained. Billy raised the tin cup to his lips, feeling the harsh heat of the metal against his cracked skin, and thought about how the desert did this to everything. It tested without warning, without mercy, without explanation. Those that took root learned quickly that survival wasn't about winning, it was about insisting. The snap of burning wood sounded too loud in the absolute stillness, as if the land itself objected to any noise that wasn't its own. The wind shifted, carrying with it the distant scent of old leather and freshly disturbed dust. Billy noticed before he heard anything. He always did. His body responded with an old reflex shaped by empty roads and hostile towns. His hand didn't move toward the Colt, but his fingers tightened slightly, feeling the weight of the weapon the way a man confirms he still exists. The cold felt sharper now, not because the temperature had dropped, but because expectation had arrived. The kind of cold that settles in when something is about to happen. He kept his eyes on the sapling, as if looking away would mean admitting the world around him held more power than it should. Without a word, Billy leaned forward and carefully pulled more soil toward the base of the plant, shielding the exposed roots from the dawn wind. His calloused fingers pressed into the hard ground, feeling its resistance, its refusal. The land offered nothing freely. It never had. Still, he pressed, adjusted, steadied. The gesture was simple, almost insignificant, yet it carried more weight than any gun ever could. When he finally stood, the sky was beginning to pale along the horizon, a thin wash of orange bleeding out from behind the mountains. Billy took one last look at the sapling, drew a slow breath of the desert's cold air, and murmured something only the earth could hear. Not a promise, but a choice. "Only if you want it to be," he murmured, voice barely louder than the wind. The sapling did not answer, but it stood. Hooves came before sound. A low vibration rolled through the earth, subtle but unmistakable. Billy did not reach for his gun. He let the fire crackle. He let the wind move. 3 horses emerged from the pale dawn, their riders wrapped in earth-colored blankets. Mescalero Apache, silent, watchful. They stopped 10 paces away. The leader dismounted slowly. His face was weathered like canyon stone, eyes dark and steady. He carried no rifle in his hands. He didn't need one. The scent of sage drifted between them, mixing with smoke and coffee. "You sit where roots remember water," the chief said, his voice low and even. Billy inclined his head. "Morning, sir." The chief's eyes moved to the sapling, then back to Billy. "The land knows those who pass gentle." Billy exhaled slowly. His fingers tightened around the cup. The coffee was cooling. "Ain't many gentle ways left," he said. The chief studied him in silence. The desert held its breath. "The town ahead," the chief finally said, "has forgotten itself." He pointed toward the valley where adobe buildings slept beneath dust and shadow. "Law there wears a crooked star. Fear walks loud. Kindness dies quiet." Billy followed his gaze. "Towns tend to do that. You do not," the chief said. It wasn't a question. Billy reached into his coat and produced a small pouch. Tobacco. He held it out. The chief accepted it with a nod. "Cross the fence by the river," the chief said, "and the land will ask who you are." Billy smiled faintly. "Guess I'll answer." The chief mounted his horse. "Only if you want it to be," he said, repeating the words as if testing their weight. They rode away without sound. They watched. Billy watched until dust swallowed them whole. By midday, the sun was merciless. Heat pressed down like a hammer, flattening shadow and color alike. Billy rode toward the town, his bay mare's muscles shifting beneath him. Spurs chimed softly. Leather creaked. Sweat ran beneath his coat. The town smelled before it appeared. Stale beer, old wood, rusted iron, and something sharp beneath it all. Waiting lead. A broken fence lay near the riverbank, wire twisted and sagging. Billy stopped there. A boundary. He dismounted. Dust puffed beneath his boots. The river beyond moved slow and dark, reflecting the sky like oil. He crossed. Only if you want it to be. The main street was empty, too empty. Shutters closed, doors barred, silence stretched thin. Billy walked toward the livery stable. A raven watched from a post, feathers slick and black. On a porch nearby sat a girl, no older than 12. She clutched a bundle of dried lavender to her chest. Its scent cut through the dust, sweet, almost painful. Her eyes found Billy's. She couldn't. She tried to speak. Her lips trembled. "Sir," she whispered, "you shouldn't be here." Billy stopped. "Sheriff's been cleaning cells," she said. "Says the floor's gonna need a new coat of red." Billy tipped his hat. "Appreciate the concern, ma'am," he noticed. Her knuckles were white, her shoes were worn through. Lavender stems snapped and brittle. He reached into his pocket and placed a silver coin in her hand. She flinched. "For the flowers," he said. He walked on. They watched. Inside the stable it was cooler. The smell of hay and old sweat hung heavy. Billy unsaddled his horse slowly, each motion deliberate. The Winchester leaned against the wall. He checked the action. Clack, clack. Sound echoed. Outside, boots approached. The saloon doors groaned open like a warning. Inside, amber light pooled thick as honey. Smoke curled toward the ceiling. Men froze mid-breath. At the bar stood a deputy with a tin star and whiskey eyes. "Thought you might show," the deputy said. "Thought wrong place, wrong day." Billy set his hat on the bar. "Just passing through, partner. Ain't nobody passes through here anymore." Silence pressed in. He noticed. The deputy's hand twitched. The brass star was dented. The fear smelled sour. "You heard of me," Billy said softly. "Heard enough. Then you know I don't shoot first." The deputy swallowed. Outside, wind struck the walls hard. They watched. The sheriff stepped into the street at sunset. Tall, broad, star-polished bright. "You were warned, Bonnie," he called. Billy stood across from him, dust swirling between them. "So were you, Sheriff." Hands hovered near holsters, silence stretched. "Only if you want it to be." The first shot cracked like thunder. The duel was fast. Smoke bloomed. Boots shifted. When it ended, the sheriff knelt in the dirt, wounded but breathing. Billy stood over him. He noticed. Soft hands. No calluses. Billy turned away. Behind the stable, the sapling lay broken. Someone had stepped on it. Billy knelt, touched the split stem. Sap bled sticky and sweet like lavender. He pressed the soil around it. Careful. The river waited beyond. He removed a small document from his coat. Folded, worn. Proof, autonomy. He buried it beneath the roots. Only if you want it to be. They watched. Billy rode into the dark. The night did not cool the land, it only changed its cruelty. Heat lingered in the soil, rising through the soles of Billy's boots as he moved along the riverbank. The Pecos whispered low, thick and slow, carrying the scent of wet mud and rot. Crickets filled the darkness with restless noise, then stopped all at once. Billy paused. Silence returned, heavy, intentional. Billy felt it settle across his shoulders before it reached his ears. That pressure, that quiet certainty that the night had shifted its attention. The air grew denser, colder against the sweat at the base of his neck, and even the river seemed to pull its voice inward. He rested a hand near his coat, not on the gun, but close enough to remember it was there. The smell of damp earth mixed with old smoke and something sharper. Iron carried on the wind. The kind of smell that didn't belong to water or stone. The kind that followed men. A low ripple moved through the reeds on the opposite bank. Not wind. Too deliberate. Billy's eyes traced the darkness, adjusting, separating shadow from shadow. Somewhere beyond the cottonwoods, leather shifted. A horse exhaled, slow and controlled. He didn't move. Movement was a question, and the night was already answering enough. His boots sank slightly into the soft mud, cold seeping through the soles, anchoring him to the ground like a reminder. You are here, and the land knows it. Then came the sound, barely more than breath. A whistle, short and hollow, cutting through the dark before vanishing into it. Billy closed his eyes for half a second and let the silence return around him, heavier now, loaded. Whatever was out there had chosen not to hide anymore. He straightened slowly, turning his body just enough to face the river, the brush, the unseen eyes beyond. The Pecos whispered on, indifferent, eternal, and Billy waited, because some moments could only be met by standing still. They watched. He felt it in his shoulders before he saw it. Movement along the far bank. Shapes slipping between cottonwoods, shadows breaking from shadows. He rested a hand near the colt, but did not draw. "Come on out," Billy said, voice steady. "Ain't polite to stare that hard." A low whistle answered him, not a bird, a signal. 3 figures emerged, then 5. Mescalero Apache warriors, faces marked with ash and dust, eyes sharp, unreadable. They moved like the land itself, quiet and precise. The chief stepped forward. Same man from the morning, same eyes. "You crossed," the chief said. Billy nodded. "Town didn't much like it. Towns rarely do." Wind moved through the cottonwoods. Leaves whispered. The chief looked toward the town lights flickering faintly behind Billy. "The girl," he said. Billy's jaw tightened. "She lives." The chief inclined his head. "Kindness leaves tracks, only if you want it to be." They moved camp before midnight. The fire was small. Smoke kept low. Coffee boiled thick and black, its bitter scent mixing with sage and river damp. Billy sat across from the chief, boots near the heat, hands resting open on his knees. No weapons drawn, no fear spoken. A young warrior handed Billy a strip of dried meat. He accepted with a nod. "You spare the sheriff," the chief said. "Didn't need killing. He will hunt you harder now." Billy chewed slowly. Maybe. Or maybe he'll remember the dirt in his mouth. The chief studied the flames. Mercy is louder than death, he said, but only to those who listen. She couldn't. A girl's face surfaced in Billy's mind. Lavender crushed between trembling fingers. Town's sick, Billy said. Fevered. Then it must sweat or break. Before dawn, a rider came hard from the east, horse blown, foam on its mouth. The man nearly fell from the saddle. "Sheriff's posse," he gasped. 10 men, maybe more. They're heading for the canyon. They watched. The warriors rose as one. "They hunt you," the chief said. "They hunt whatever scares 'em," Billy replied. The chief's gaze hardened. Canyon is a throat. Blood flows easy there. Billy looked toward the east. The horizon bled pale light. "Then we don't meet 'em there." The canyon waited anyway. Red stone walls rose sharp and narrow, trapping heat and sound. Wind screamed through the pass, carrying dust and the stink of sweat and leather. Billy rode ahead, Winchester across his saddle. Behind him the Apache moved unseen, slipping between rock and shadow. Hooves thundered closer. The posse came loud, too loud. Sheriff at the front, bandaged dark with blood. "Barney!" he shouted. "Ain't no river wide enough." Billy turned his horse sideways in the narrow pass. "Shoulda stayed home, Sheriff." The first shot echoed. Then chaos. Gunfire cracked. Smoke filled the canyon. Horses screamed. Billy fired once, twice, not to kill, to break formation. He noticed. A young deputy froze. Hands shaking, eyes wide. Billy shouted, "Drop it!" The deputy dropped his rifle. A knife flashed from the rocks. Warriors struck fast, precise. Weapons knocked away, men disarmed, not slaughtered. The sheriff fired wildly. Billy moved. One shot. Clean. The sheriff's gun flew from his hand. Silence fell sudden and brutal. Bodies breathed. No one dead. They watched. The posse backed away, broken. After, the canyon smelled of dust and fear. Billy stood among fallen weapons. The sheriff lay propped against stone, pale and shaking. "Why?" the sheriff rasped. "You could have ended it." Billy crouched. "Town's already buried enough." He stood and walked away. "Only if you want it to be." By noon, the town gathered. Not a lynch mob, a crowd. Men stared, women whispered. The girl with lavender stood near the front. The sheriff stood beside Billy. No badge, no gun. "Law's done crooked here," the sheriff said. "Ends today." Murmurs spread. She couldn't. The girl stepped forward, held out the lavender. Billy knelt, took it. "For rememberin'," she said. Billy smiled once. "For growin'." He left at sunset. The river glimmered gold. The sapling stood, bent, wounded, alive. Billy placed a hand on its leaves. "Only if you want it to be." They watched. He rode west. The town did not sleep after that. Windows stayed lit long past midnight. Voices murmured behind thin adobe walls. The air smelled of smoke, sweat, and old fear finally stirred awake. Dust hung suspended, as if the ground itself hesitated to settle. Billy remained on the edge of it all. He sat near the stable, back against a post, boots stretched forward. The lavender lay beside him, brittle now, its scent faint but stubborn. The fire nearby crackled low, offering warmth against the cold that crept back in after sunset. Cold enough to remind a man he was still flesh. They watched. From the shadows of doorways, from behind curtains, from the dark gaps between buildings. Billy felt it, he always did. Boots approached, measured, heavy. The former sheriff stopped a few steps away, no star on his chest. Just a man now. His hands shook slightly in the firelight. "Town's talkin'," he said. Billy didn't look up. "Town always does. Some want you gone, some want you thanked. Most don't know what they want." Billy picked up the lavender, rolled the stems between his fingers. "That's usually how it starts." The man swallowed. "They're calling for a meeting. Judgment. Out here?" "Sunrise." Billy finally met his eyes. "And you?" "I ain't sheriff anymore." "Didn't ask that." The man hesitated. "I want this done clean." Billy nodded once. "Then keep it that way." Before dawn, the cold sharpened. Frost touched the edges of water troughs. Breath showed pale and brief. Horses shifted, stamping softly. The town gathered in the main street. No gallows, no ropes, just faces. Men with sun-cracked skin, women holding children close. The girl with lavender stood near the front again, clutching the last of it like a charm. A wooden table served as the center. Authority improvised. They watched. A rancher spoke first. "He's a killer," a miner answered. "So's the desert." Voices rose, fell, rose again. Billy stood apart, hands visible, weapons holstered. He noticed. Fear wasn't the loudest thing there. Confusion was. The former sheriff stepped forward. "I abused the law," he said. "Used it like a club. This man spared me when he didn't have to." Murmurs rippled. "That don't erase blood," someone shouted. Billy spoke then, calm, clear. "Ain't asking forgiveness, ain't asking trust, just saying this town don't need another grave to feel righteous." Silence followed. She couldn't. The girl stepped forward, held up the lavender. "He paid me for this," she said, like it mattered. Her voice shook, but she stood. The wind picked up, lifting dust between boots. "Only if you want it to be." A shot rang out, not from Billy. A man at the edge of the crowd fired wild. Panic surged. Billy moved fast. He tackled the shooter, wrenched the gun away, tossed it aside. No return fire, no blood. They watched. The man sobbed. The crowd froze. Billy stood, dust clinging to his coat. "That's enough," he said, "for today." By noon, word spread fast. Posse riders spotted to the south. Different men, different star. Federal. The town knew what that meant. Billy packed his saddle. The former sheriff approached again. "They won't stop," he said. "Not now." Billy tightened the cinch. "Never do. You could run." Billy looked toward the river, toward the broken fence, toward the sapling. "I am." The Apache waited beyond town. Same warriors, same silence. The chief stood beside his horse. "Choice stands," he said. "Cross with us, or cross alone." Billy glanced back once. The girl raised the lavender. She couldn't. Billy touched the brim of his hat. "Take care of it," he said. The chief turned his horse north. "Only if you want it to be." Billy followed. They watched. Behind them, the town settled. Not healed, but changed. Ahead, the land waited. The land changed as they rode. Dust gave way to stone. Stone gave way to scrub twisted low by wind and years of refusal. The air thinned, colder now, sharp enough to cut breath short. Every sound carried farther. Every mistake echoed longer. Billy rode at the edge of the group. Not a leader, not a prisoner, a man walking beside his choices. The Apache horses moved sure-footed, hooves striking rock with dull certainty. Leather creaked, feathers stirred. Somewhere ahead, a hawk cried once, then vanished into the pale sky. They watched, from ridgelines, from memory, from the land itself. By the third day, the scent of smoke returned. Not campfire, gun smoke. Billy reined in his horse. The chief raised a hand. The warriors halted without a word. Below them, in a shallow basin, riders gathered. Federal men, blue coats dulled by dust, rifles slung low, discipline held tight. "They followed," Billy said. The chief nodded. The land told them where not to look. Billy exhaled slowly. "Then it's on me." The chief studied him. "Blood follows blood. Not today." They descended at dusk. The basin filled with long shadows, orange light bleeding across stone like a wound refusing to close. Wind whistled between rocks, carrying the smell of cold iron and old sweat. Billy walked forward alone, hands visible, no gun drawn. A federal marshal stepped out. "William Bonney," he called. "You're done running." Billy stopped 10 paces away. "Ain't running, just moving." Rifles lifted, they watched. "You killed men," the marshal said. "So did the land," Billy replied. "You spared others." Billy nodded. "Sometimes." Silence stretched thin. "Step forward," the marshal ordered. Billy didn't move. "There's a line," Billy said. "You cross it, you don't come back the same." The marshal scoffed. "You talk like you're worth listening to." He noticed. A young soldier near the back, pale, sweating despite the cold. Fingers white on his rifle. She couldn't. The lavender surfaced again, fragile, defiant, only if you want it to be. The first shot didn't come from either side. It came from fear. The young soldier fired wild. Chaos erupted. Rifles cracked. Smoke rolled thick. Horses screamed. Billy moved fast. He tackled the soldier, wrenching the rifle away. Another shot tore past his shoulder, hot and close. Pain bloomed. He grunted but stayed upright. The chief's whistle cut sharp through the noise. Warriors surged, not to kill, to break. Rifles knocked aside, lines shattered. Billy staggered, blood darkening his sleeve. They watched. A second shot found him. Lower this time, he fell to one knee, breath knocked clean from his chest. Dust coated his hands. The world narrowed to sound and heat and pressure. The marshal stood over him, pistol raised. "You should have stayed a ghost," he said. Billy looked up. "Maybe," he rasped. "But ghosts don't plant nothing." The marshal hesitated. He noticed the warriors surrounding him, silent, unmoving. The pistol lowered. The marshal backed away. "This ain't worth it," he muttered. They withdrew. Night fell fast. Cold wrapped tight around Billy as he lay near a small fire. The wound burned. Each breath came shallow. The chief knelt beside him. "You chose," he said. Billy smiled faintly. "Always do. The land will keep you," the chief said. One way or another. Billy reached into his coat with shaking fingers, pulled out a small bundle, lavender, crushed, faded. "Found it in my pocket," he whispered. "Guess it's stuck." The chief took it gently. "Kindness, roots deep, only if you want it to be." Before dawn, the pain dulled. Billy sat against a rock, watching the sky lighten. Frost clung to the ground. His breath showed thin and pale. He looked toward the east. "Don't reckon I'll ride much farther." The chief said nothing. Billy pressed his palm into the soil, felt its cold, its weight. "Tell the girl," he said. "Keep planting." The chief placed a hand over his. "She will." When the sun rose, it found the land unchanged. Stone, wind, silence. Billy lay still, hat pulled low, face turned toward the light. No gun in his hand, no fear in his eyes. They watched. Seasons passed. The sapling by the river grew, slow, crooked, alive. Travelers spoke of a town that learned restraint, of a girl who sold lavender by the handful, of land that remembered a man who chose mercy when violence would have been easier. History kept its posters, but the earth kept the truth, only if you want it to be. They watched.